Pay attention to the global launch we have in our hands. Because today the Cannondale Moterra LT hits the market, a real electric beast in enduro that's packed with changes and new features. I'll cover everything in this review. Let's go all out. Right? Thank you. It's easy to see that this bike, this LT, has little to do with its little sister, the Moterra Superlight, which was introduced just a year ago. A little later in the video, I will explain the differences between them, but it's obvious that we're looking at a true enduro beast. It's built on a platform with 170 mm front travel, 165 mm rear travel, and comes standard with a coil shock in the rear suspension. Remember, it's built for a specific platform, so you'll always find a 29-inch front wheel and a 27.5-inch back wheel. And this time, all the attention in the electric section goes to Bosch with its most powerful motor, the Performance Line CX with 85 Newton meters, a peak power of 600 W, and the official Bosch Power Tube battery with 800 Wh. An interesting feature of this LT has to do with the ability to remove the battery. Think about it, especially for those who want to spend days in the mountains swapping batteries. Or also for those who compete in enduro and maybe, well, between heats, want to change the battery as well. Another option is to install the 600 Wh Bosch battery to have a bit more agility and less weight. And it's also 100% compatible with Bosch's official range extender with up to 250 Wh extra. The rest of the controls, displays, and other Bosch components are the smallest you'll find in the German brand's catalog. Always designed to distract the rider as little as possible and keep him focused on the trail. In this new model, they've managed to reduce almost a kilo between the frame and the bike's electrical components. Also, in terms of geometry, let's say it follows Canon's traditional line. It has evolved a little, but it still keeps the head tube characteristics. With a relatively high head tube, a traditionally compact reach, and a very slack head angle, in this case, 64.4 degrees. When we talk about geometries and Cannondale, it's important to remember that this brand, unlike the vast majority of others, develops independently within each of their models, the kinematics and geometry of each of their sizes. One geometry and kinematics for the XS, another for the S, another for the M, and so on, right? As I was saying, it might seem strange, but the vast majority of brands actually develop the M size when it comes to geometry and kinematics. From there, multiply for L or extra large or divide for S or XS. Cannondale works like this. What can be confirmed is that a biker can be 1.95 meters tall or 1.55 meters tall on the same model. Will they end up having the same riding feel? And this is something to really value and take into consideration, especially if you're at one of the size extremes. Check out this detail to better understand the unique geometry of this bike. And from the view I have holding the handlebars, which is this one here, I can clearly see the Cannondale logo. I mean, this is something that doesn't usually happen. Normally, the stem covers the head tube, or the head tube has less of an angle and is more vertical. And you can't see it, right? Here, the combination of a short stem and a very slack head angle allows us to see the logo on the head tube. Impressive. Let's talk about kinematics now, because that's another thing that, on paper, when Cannondale said that this model was going to be even more progressive than the previous ones, I thought, whoa, careful, because Cannondale has traditionally been very progressive in some models. For my taste, even a bit on the edge. And let's see if this bike is going to suffer from that, right? Of having the feeling that the rear end slips out on you the moment it takes a big hit. And I have to tell you that I couldn't be happier. Because above all, the addition of the spring in this longer travel model gives the bike an incredible feel. Unbelievable, it's a flying carpet. Let's talk about components now because there are several interesting choices. To start with, the drivetrain, the rear derailleur. It's a SRAM90, the latest release from the American brand, which is probably the best way to, on one hand, get the most out of universal derailleur hanger technology, and on the other hand, keep the final price of the bike in check. Because we're talking about a mechanical group set. On the other hand, we have DT Swiss 1900 spline wheels with a 30 mm internal width where these stable tires fit perfectly. 2.5 both front and rear. Of course, up front, you can see a Fox 38 performance. And a very interesting topic, I'll say it's the brakes, the TRP Evo Pro, which has a huge disc rotor. In the front, it's 220 millimeters in diameter, and in the rear, it's 203. Guys, when it comes to brakes, don't be fooled by looks. I understand that many of you aren't familiar with this TRP because obviously Shimano and SRAM have a much bigger presence in our market, but I can tell you it's an up-and-coming brand. I've tried them on other bikes. And personally, both the bite and especially the feel, I really like them a lot. A lot, to the point that I can tell you that personally, they're very similar to some Shimano dual piston brakes, where all the force you apply to the lever is transferred, let's say linearly, without any alterations, all the way to the caliper. Let's see, this is a bit tricky, you see? Does braking sound good? Another thing is whether I took the line better or worse. Let's go. Is it time to compare the MOTE RRA LT with the MOTE RRA Superlight? How are they similar? Well, pretty much in nothing.
First, the little sister. The Superlight uses Shimano, while the LT is all Bosch.
On one hand, the Superlight has a philosophy of being like a Superlight full power bike, right there at the 20 kilo limit. However, the LT aims to be, well, very versatile. Being able to mount several batteries, 600 or 800 watt hours, or even the official Bosch range extender with an extra 250 watt hours. Something that at least officially you can do on the Superlight. So this bike is designed to be more versatile, to have a wider battery range and so on and so forth. And a very interesting topic is the suspension system. Since the Superlight inherits the flex pivot, which has been used for years now, in the World Cup with the scalpel, with the bike, let's call it muscular, though I don't like that term, but you get what I mean. The cross-country performance bike from brand Y. However, on this LT, the engineers have decided to use a traditional pivot point. In the end, this always slightly increases the weight. Very important as well. The Superlight always comes standard with two 29-inch wheels. It can be converted to mullet if desired, but the LT always comes in mullet. 29 inches front, 27.5 inches back. I would say that in terms of handling differences with the Moterra Superlight look, now that I'm in an area like this, very twisty, where the Superlight should be much more maneuverable than this one, honestly, I don't think it's clumsy. But the main difference is weight. Over 5 kilos separates the two models. Obviously, the inertia and all that don't just disappear, but the geometry of this bike is so well designed. And what about the kinematics? What makes it so that even on these trails, which are more about left-right winding and so on, well, the bike feels very agile. That's the big surprise for me. I expected this to work well at high speed in a straight line, but it didn't. Around here, these are luxury trails. Nothing to envy about the little sister. Shit. She's very explosive. In other words, the Superlight for me would be like the casual bike, the one you take out for 2-3 hours just to have fun, and that's it. Let's imagine, to make an analogy, like that convertible you have in the garage. Well, for those who have a convertible, for those lucky enough to have a convertible. But just imagine that convertible you have in the garage. Kept safe, well polished, and you only take it out on a sunny Sunday to enjoy it, to have a good time with that car.
Well, that's what the Superlight would be for me.
However, I would compare this beast more to a multifunction, multi-tool tractor that you use every day of the year to keep the field in working order and everything that comes with it. That beast will put a smile on your face, and you can adjust it in terms of batteries and configurations to adapt it to the time of year, to your fitness level, or to whatever you're looking for at that moment. But yes, I see it more as a real beast. Let's go up. Well, I admit that when I read the technical booklet with all the measurements, geometry, travel, and so on, I thought, wow, this bike is going to be hard to handle. Especially going uphill, mainly because of the slack head angle, the compact ridge, and especially the mule format. But nothing could be further from the truth. The truth is that the bike feels super agile. I'd say it penalizes far less than its little sister. The super light in its weak point when riding, which is when pointing uphill with the front wheel lifting up. Especially in the mullet versions. Not this one. There's no such problem. The weight positioning of the biker on the bike is much better balanced. Has that little extra wheelbase compared to previous models worked well for you? What do you think of Cannondale's new e-bike proposal? Comment your score from 1 to 10. If you've used other Cannondale e-bikes, please share your feedback below. Because that way other people will have more opinions and can benefit when deciding if this should be their bike or not. Hope you enjoyed the review. Please subscribe and like if you can. I'd really appreciate it. Be happy. See you in the next videos. Bye.